The Coventry Court Homeowners Association had a rule for everything. There was a rule for the precise shade of white your trim could be painted. Chantilly lace, never Swiss coffee. A rule for the maximum allowable height of a garden gnome, 8 inches. And a rule for the approved species of decorative shrubbery, boxwood exclusively. The architect of this suburban utopia and the enforcer of its sacred texts was Brenda Davenport. My name is Daniel, and I am by nature a quiet observer. I work from home as a data analyst, which means my life revolves around finding patterns in chaos. When my wife Ava and I moved to Coventry Court 6 months ago, I thought we'd found our quiet corner of the world. Ava's job is demanding. It involves long, unpredictable hours and a level of stress I can barely comprehend. Our home was meant to be her sanctuary, a place of absolute peace. Brenda, it seemed, had a different definition of peace. Our first encounter was over a welcome mat. It was a simple black mat with the word welcome in a looping friendly script. Brenda appeared at our door, clipboard in hand, her blonde helmet of hair unmoving in the breeze. "Mr. and Mrs. Rostova," she announced, though Ava was at work and only I was home. She peered down at our welcome mat through her oversized sunglasses. Section 12.4 of the Aesthetic Guidelines clearly states that all doormats must be of a woven, natural fiber. This synthetic material is a violation. She handed me a laminated warning. I was too bewildered to argue. I just thanked her and replaced the mat. I learned early on that it was easier to comply than to engage. Ava, however, was different. She had spent her entire career in environments where rules had life or death consequences. She found Brenda's petty decrees endlessly amusing. "She wants us to submit a color swatch for our new mailbox flag?" Ava would ask, laughing as she read a notice I'd set aside. "Does she have a command center where she monitors these things?" The answer, I would soon learn, was yes. The real conflict began when Ava returned from a 2-week-long training exercise. That's what she called her work trips. She arrived late one Tuesday night, exhausted, carrying a single standard-issue black duffel bag. She was wearing simple jeans and a black t-shirt, her dark hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. She looked tired, but happy to be home. The next morning, we were in our backyard enjoying a rare, quiet cup of coffee together. That's when Brenda made her move. She didn't knock. She simply appeared at the edge of our patio, her arms crossed, her face a mask of stern disapproval. "Good morning," she said, her voice dripping with implication. "I see your guest is still here." Ava and I exchanged a confused look. "Brenda, this is my wife, Eva," I said slowly. Brenda let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Mr. Rostova, please. I am not an idiot. I've seen your wife. She's a lovely blonde woman I met at the last community bake sale. This woman," she said, gesturing towards Eva with a flick of her wrist, "has been here for 2 weeks. I have noted her comings and goings. Our bylaws have very strict rules about unauthorized long-term occupants." I was stunned into silence. The lovely blonde woman was my sister, who had visited for a weekend a month ago. Brenda, in her zealous surveillance, had confused the two. Ava, true to her nature, remained completely unflustered. She took a slow sip of her coffee. "I can assure you, I am his wife," she said, her voice even. "I highly doubt that," Brenda snapped. "And until you can provide official identification, proving your residency, I am going to have to ask you to vacate the premises. We have a transient problem in this county, and I will not have it spilling into Coventry Court." This was a new level of insanity. I started to protest, but Eva placed a calming hand on my arm. She looked directly at Brenda, her brown eyes sharp and analytical. It was a look I had seen her use before, one that could deconstruct a person's entire life in a matter of seconds. "You want to see my ID?" Eva asked, a hint of steel in her voice. It is my right as HOA president to ensure the safety and compliance of this community, Brenda declared, puffing out her chest. All right, Eva said, standing up. I don't have my driver's license on me, but I have another form of identification. It's at my office. I'll go get it. She walked inside, leaving me alone with Brenda, who looked smugly triumphant. You see, Daniel, she said, using my first name for the first time. Rules are what separate us from the animals. An hour passed. I had assumed Ava would return with her passport or some other document. I did not expect what happened next. It started with a low, distant hum, a sound that grew steadily louder, deeper. It wasn't a car. It was the rhythmic thumping of a helicopter. I stepped out onto the front lawn. My neighbors were coming out of their houses looking up at the sky. A sleek black helicopter was descending, not towards the nearby park, but seemingly towards our street. Brenda was on her lawn, her hands on her hips, a look of pure fury on her face. She was already on her phone. Yes, I'm reporting an unauthorized aerial vehicle above Coventry Court. It's a clear violation of FAA regulations and our community's noise ordinances. I demand you send a unit immediately. The helicopter didn't land. It hovered about 100 feet above the end of our cul-de-sac. Then, a figure rappelled down, landing with practiced ease on the asphalt. It was Eva. She was now dressed in a full, dark gray tactical uniform, the kind I had only ever seen in movies. She calmly unhooked herself from the rope and started walking towards our house as the helicopter ascended and flew away. By the time Ava reached our driveway, 2 police cars had arrived, their lights flashing. Brenda marched up to them, her face flushed with righteous anger. There she is, officers, that woman! She is the unauthorized occupant, and now she is engaging in what I can only assume is some sort of terrorist training exercise in our neighborhood. I want her arrested. The 2 officers looked from the enraged Brenda to the utterly composed Eva, who was now standing next to me. Ma'am, can you please tell us what's going on? One of the officers asked Ava, clearly confused. Before Ava could answer, Brenda interrupted. I demand to see her identification. She is a threat to this community. She has no right to be here. Ava looked at the officer, then at Brenda. She reached into a pocket on her tactical vest and pulled out a small black wallet. She didn't open it. She just held it. You wanted my ID, Brenda, Eva said, her voice low and calm. Here it is. But just as she was about to hand it to the officer, the squeal of tires filled the air. 2 large black armored vehicles screeched to a halt at the end of the street, blocking it off completely. The doors flew open and a team of 8 heavily armed men in full SWAT gear poured out, their movements precise and coordinated. They weren't from the local police. Their uniforms were different, bearing an unfamiliar insignia. They formed a defensive perimeter, their weapons held at a low ready. Brenda was speechless. Her face, which had been red with rage, was now pale with confusion and a dawning hint of fear. The local officers had their hands near their holsters, clearly out of their depth. A man emerged from the lead vehicle. He was tall and athletic, his head shaved, his face set in a look of intense seriousness. He wore the same tactical gear as the others, but with commander insignias on his collar. He strode directly towards Ava. He stopped 2 feet in front of her and snapped to perfect attention. His voice was a sharp, clear bark that cut through the silence. Major Rostova! The training simulation was compromised. We have a developing situation downtown. We need you, ma'am. Ava nodded. Report, Commander. The SWAT commander didn't look at me or Brenda or the local cops. He looked only at his superior officer. Domestic extremist cell has taken a hostage in the federal building. They're demanding... He leaned in and whispered something I couldn't hear. As he spoke, the rest of his team turned, their attention now focused outward, securing the area. It was a fluid, professional display of power that made Brenda's HOA rules seem like a child's game. The commander finished his report. Eva listened, her expression unchanging, her mind clearly processing a dozen different variables. Then, the commander noticed Brenda and the local cops for the first time. He gave them a cursory, dismissive glance. "Is there a problem here, Major?" he asked. It was Brenda who found her voice first, though it was now a weak, trembling whisper. "Major?" Ava turned her head slowly, her sharp brown eyes locking onto Brenda's. For the first time, she allowed a small, cold smile to touch her lips. She held up the black wallet she was still holding and flipped it open. It wasn't a driver's license. It was a military ID. "Brenda," Eva said, her voice quiet but carrying more authority than Brenda had ever possessed. "You demanded to see my identification. My name is Major Eva Rostova. I am the commanding officer of the Federal Special Operations Unit for this region. This," she said, gesturing to the SWAT team, "is my unit. They are here to escort me to a national security crisis. And you," she finished, her voice turning to ice, "are currently obstructing a federal officer in the performance of her duties." The color drained completely from Brenda's face. She looked at the armored trucks, at the heavily armed men standing on her perfect lawns, at the military ID in Ava's hand, and finally, at the local police officers, who were now looking at her as if she were a live bomb. The SWAT commander turned to one of the local officers. "Officer," he said, his voice clipped and official, "my commander's departure to a federal emergency is being delayed by this civilian. This is now a matter of national security. Please secure her." The word secure hung in the air. The local officer, understanding the gravity of the command from a federal officer, walked over to Brenda. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now formal and devoid of any patience, "you are being detained for interfering with a federal operation." Brenda didn't resist. She couldn't. She was frozen, a statue of pure, unadulterated shock. The woman who derived her power from laminated notices and mailbox regulations was being arrested on the orders of a woman she had tried to evict for naught. Having the right idea, Eva turned to me. She gave my hand a quick squeeze. "I have to go," she whispered. "I'll call when I can." She gave me a quick professional nod, then turned and strode towards the armored vehicle, the commander falling into step behind her. As she left, the SWAT team collapsed their perimeter as fluidly as they had created it, boarding their vehicles. Within a minute, they were gone. They left behind a stunned silence, 2 bewildered local cops, and a pale, trembling Brenda Davenport standing in the middle of the street.